Every empire begins with a promise and ends with an excuse. Rome swore its silver was eternal. France believed its paper was sacred. America calls its debt safe. Each time, the same truth cuts through the illusion. Money is never stable. Trust is never permanent. Collapse isn't the exception, it's the rhythm of history. From the ashes of dynasties to the digital vaults of modern finance, the pattern repeats. People build temples to their currencies, then wake to find those temples made of dust. The true catastrophe isn't the loss of money, it's the loss of meaning. When value dies, everything denominated in it dies too. The illusion of permanence is civilization's favorite narcotic. We look at glowing screens, showing account balances, and mistake pixels for power. We see governments printing, promising, spending, and call it control. But control ends the moment confidence cracks, because money is not metal. It is belief, shaped into coins and digits. And belief can evaporate overnight. History whispers this warning through the ruins of markets. The fall of currencies isn't chaos, it's calibration. It resets who owns, who begs, who rules. Collapse reveals what was real all along: the gold beneath the paint, the land beneath the promise, the skill behind survival. The question isn't whether wealth disappears. It always does. The question is what remains after the illusion burns. Every civilization leaves behind relics of its delusion. For Rome, it was tin coins polished to mimic silver. For Byzantium, it was gold stretched thinner than faith. For our age, it's the glow of a digital number we call net worth. Yet, the core is unchanged. Wealth is a story, and every story ends when people stop believing. When you strip away the fiction, you find what endures. The field still yields wheat, the craftsman still builds, the family still eats. The rest, paper, digits, slogans, dissolve. This is not cynicism. It is physics. Energy doesn't vanish. It moves. So does wealth. Every collapse is a transfer from the many who trusted to the few who understood. The first great test of money's illusion came in Byzantium, a city that believed it had outwitted time. For 1,000 years, it watched other empires crumble and convinced itself that gold could buy eternity. The solidus was its miracle, a coin so pure it outlived dynasties. Merchants from Venice to Damascus treated it as gospel, but faith always tempts the powerful. When emperors discovered they could stretch gold further by mixing it with baser metals, they believed they had discovered alchemy, turning scarcity into abundance. What they truly discovered was decay. The first coins shaved were invisible betrayals. The people didn't notice. The traders kept trading. The illusion held until one day the weight felt wrong in the hand. Then came suspicion, panic, collapse. The coin that had unified 3 continents became a ghost of its former self. Inflation rose like rot beneath marble. Trust, once cracked, never mended. And when Byzantium's faith in its own coin died, so did its authority. The merchants who doubted early bought land, silver, anything that felt solid. They became the quiet survivors. The rest, those who trusted imperial promises, watched their fortunes dissolve into dust. That is the first law of every collapse. Governments cannot resist the temptation to counterfeit time itself. They dilute their money, and with it, their future. The story of Byzantium isn't ancient, it's eternal. Every age repeats it with new materials. Once it was silver, then gold. Now it's digital credit, printed at the speed of panic. The faces change, the formula doesn't. Belief stretched thinner until it snaps. History doesn't punish greed, it punishes blindness. And each empire, convinced it's smarter than the last, proves the same law again. Value can be decreed, but never faked. When wealth turns to illusion, only the real remains: metal, land, skill, or faith that can't be printed. When the plague loosened its grip, Europe rebuilt not with gold, but with confidence. Cities rose again, cathedrals glittered, and in Florence, something new was born: banking. Families like the Bardi and Peruzzi turned promises into instruments, trust into credit, paper into power. For a moment, it seemed the alchemy had worked. Florence became the beating heart of European finance, a city whose vaults held the fates of kings. But the same disease that once hid in rats now hid in ledgers: overconfidence. When Edward III of England borrowed vast sums to fund his war against France, Florence obliged. Gold flowed outward, paper promises flowed back. Then came silence. The king defaulted. The Bardi and Peruzzi fell. Their vaults emptied, their clients ruined, their city gasping for breath, not from plague this time, but from debt. In that collapse, a truth revealed itself sharper than any sword. Size does not mean safety. Too big to fail was already a myth, 6 centuries before Wall Street coined the phrase. Institutions exist to profit, not to protect, and when they fall, They don't cushion the people beneath them, they crush them. History repeats the sound of the same door slamming shut. 1,345 inches Florence, 2,008 inches New York, 2,019 inches Beirut. Every era invents its own architecture of trust, and every era watches it crumble the same way. Quietly at first, then all at once. The ordinary citizen learns too late that banks do not hold treasure, they hold promises, and promises dissolve faster than ink. The lesson isn't to hate systems, it's to see through them. Every vault, every institution, every government is a reflection of human belief. And belief, no matter how elegant its facade, is fragile. The wise don't abandon trust, they diversify it. They understand that the pillars of finance are made of paper, and paper burns beautifully. Every revolution begins by breaking chains and ends by minting new ones. In 1,790 seconds, France, liberty was printed on paper. The revolutionaries had seized church lands and promised a new financial dawn, assignats, a currency backed by confiscated property, a promise wrapped in idealism. For a brief moment, the people believed that faith in freedom could replace faith in gold. But belief, once used as collateral, always runs out. The government printed more. Each new issue diluted the last. Prices rose faster than speeches could justify them. Bread vanished. Farmers refused to trade grain for paper. The same mob that had toppled kings now tore down the markets that fed them. And as trust collapsed, so did the revolution's moral currency. The assignat was never merely a note, it was a mirror. It showed how every society mistakes ideology for value. The Jacobins declared equality, the printers declared abundance, and both discovered that paper, no matter how noble its symbols, burns at the same temperature. Yet from that fire came a lesson that still smolders centuries later. Promises, whether royal or revolutionary, die the same death, they outprint reality. The survivors of France's monetary collapse were not the loudest patriots, but the quiet pragmatists. Farmers, craftsmen, those who owned something the state could not replicate. History's cruelty is its symmetry. Every era believes its ideals are immune to arithmetic. Every nation thinks its cause is worth any currency. But debt and devaluation speak a language older than politics. It whispers, belief cannot be manufactured, and when belief dies, even revolutions turn to dust. The 20th century crowned debt as civilization's new god. Empires no longer hoarded gold, they printed belief. Paper became progress, credit became destiny. The Great Depression was supposed to be the last collapse, the final warning, but humanity never learns from pain, only from repetition. So, the cycle began anew. Promises stacked upon promises, zeros upon zeros, until numbers replaced meaning. After 1945, the world rebuilt on IOUs. Nations borrowed against the future to purchase the illusion of stability. When Nixon severed the gold link in 1971, money was finally liberated, not from tyranny, but from restraint. From that moment on, currency became a story without an anchor. Governments could print comfort, corporations could borrow immortality, and citizens mistook credit for wealth. Debt became invisible, like air everywhere, necessary, unnoticed. But invisible things kill quietly. The late 20th century brought booms and crashes that all spoke the same tongue. Trust inflated, trust imploded. The Asian crisis, the dot-com bubble, the mortgage inferno, each was a rehearsal for the same old tragedy. When confidence peaks, collapse whispers. The illusion of safety was the masterpiece of the modern era. Banks told us deposits were guaranteed. States told us pensions were eternal. Investors told themselves that graphs could only rise. But mathematics doesn't negotiate with optimism. When systems are built on leverage, every borrowed moment demands repayment with interest. Yet amid the wreckage, history again rewards the same few. Those who saw the pattern beneath the promises. The quiet ones who held something real: land, skill, productive hands, while the rest held abstractions. The lesson is cruel, but it's also liberating. When the world is addicted to debt, true wealth is not what you owe, but what you can create when credit dies. It began quietly, as collapses always do. A few withdrawals delayed, a few rumors dismissed. Screens still glowed, interest still accrued, and everyone still believed that digits were real. Until one morning, they weren't. Banks closed their doors, ATMs blinked out, the hum of transactions stopped, and a new sound took its place: silence. For decades, people had confused convenience with safety. They believed the vault was their ally, the ledger their memory. But a bank is not a guardian. It is a mirror of collective faith. When that faith cracks, the reflection disappears. Depositors became petitioners overnight. Money, once a promise of power, became a line on a frozen screen. History had warned them in Lebanon, in Greece, in Argentina, that banks can die like organisms, starving not from lack of cash, but from lack of trust. And yet, each generation must learn the lesson anew. Your savings in a vault are not treasure. They are a loan you've extended to an institution that can choose not to return it. Amid the collapse, a quiet shift unfolded. People turned inward, rediscovering what was never digitized: skill, community, reputation. A baker with flour was richer than a trader with code. A farmer with seed was wealthier than a shareholder with graphs. The collapse had stripped wealth of its illusions and revealed what had always been true, that value is not stored, it is sustained. The paradox of every financial disaster is the same. When the system breaks, it frees the individual. When the scaffolding of false stability falls away, what remains are those who can create, mend, feed, and build. Money loses meaning, but purpose does not. The bank's silence, for those who listen closely, is not an ending. It is an invitation to rebuild value where it was never lost, inside human hands. When paper burned and screens went dark, a strange new economy emerged, one without digits, without graphs, without illusion. It was not invented. It had always existed, waiting beneath the noise. Its currency was not printed, but practiced. Its value was not stored, but shared. It was the economy of creation. In every age of collapse, after the coins have crumbled and the debts have drowned, production becomes the only surviving faith. The blacksmith who can forge, the farmer who can feed, the builder who can repair, these are the new central banks. Their balance sheets are made of time, sweat, and trust measured not in numbers, but in memory. Modern civilization had mistaken wealth for accumulation. It hoarded digits, not capabilities. But when the digital veil tore, the hierarchy inverted. Those who could produce replaced those who could promise. A handful of craftsmen fed entire neighborhoods. A single skilled worker could trade for what money once bought by default. The market became human again, slow, real, and alive. It's tempting to call this regression. It isn't. It is restoration. Every financial system, no matter how vast, eventually collapses back into the one economy it cannot outgrow: necessity. When illusions vanish, people rediscover that value is not something they hold, it's something they do. That is the paradox of collapse. It strips civilization of comfort, but returns it to truth. Creation outlives credit. Labor outlasts leverage. And in the quiet aftermath, the question remains not, what is money worth, but what am I worth without it? When the numbers vanished and the ledgers turned blank, something unexpected began to trade integrity. Reputation became collateral. Character became currency. For the first time in centuries, transactions no longer depended on contracts, but on conscience. People remembered that trust was never born from signatures. It was earned through behavior. In a world stripped of accounting systems, honesty became arithmetic. A word kept was worth more than a coin hoarded. And among the ruins of lost empires, a quiet revolution began, one not of markets, but of morals. This was the economy before money, and it will be the economy after it. Communities measured wealth by reliability. Those who deceived were bankrupt, no matter their possessions. Those who honored promises were rich, even in rags. The ancient truth had resurfaced. Value is not what you have, but what you uphold. For centuries, civilization had outsourced morality to systems, laws, banks, governments, assuming institutions could guarantee virtue. But virtue, like gold, corrodes when left unattended. When those systems fell, humans rediscovered that ethics was not regulation, it was survival. That is the last paradox of collapse. When money dies, morality returns, not as a sermon, but as structure. It becomes the invisible currency that restores order, rebuilds trust, and gives weight to words again. In the end, civilizations don't fall because they run out of gold. They fall because they run out of honesty. When the dust finally settles, no one asks about prices. They ask about purpose. History's last currency is not gold, nor credit, nor paper, it is meaning. Empires have fallen chasing wealth. Civilizations have survived by rediscovering why they existed at all. The world after collapse is quiet in a way that feels holy. Without the hum of markets or the pulse of speculation, people hear again the rhythm of necessity, the slow breathing of life itself. Fields grow food, hands build shelter, words rebuild trust. What once seemed primitive now feels pure. In the ruins of consumption, creation feels sacred. The lesson of every collapse is the same. Wealth without wisdom is weight without gravity. It floats, drifts, and vanishes. But meaning endures because it belongs to no one and sustains everyone. The richest societies are not those with the most assets, but those with the deepest understanding of value. And so, the story ends where it began with trust. Not the blind trust in paper or authority, but the earned trust between people who still choose to believe in one another. Money dies when faith fractures, but it is reborn every time a promise is kept. If there is a final call to action, it is this: invest in what cannot collapse: knowledge, kindness, craft, and truth. Like gold, they cannot be printed. Unlike gold, they grow when shared. History does not repeat, but it rhymes, and this time, the rhyme is hope. If this awakens something in you, share it not for numbers, but for awareness. The world rebuilds, not through capital, but through consciousness.